Round 1 of the Six Nations gave us a very clear idea of where each team is. My name's Mark. Let's talk rugby. Round 1 of the Six Nations, done and dusted. In this video, we're not going to go through each of the games in detail. I've got full reviews of them up on the channel if you want to go check those out, if that's what you are looking for at the minute. This is more of a synopsis, looking at the results, looking at just very quickly what the scores were in terms of who scored what, and then diving down into stats from the weekend and having a look, talking about overall performance and where teams are, and then having a look at the table as well. So before we get started, I would ask you, especially if you're kind of a long-time viewer of the channel, if you're new here, you can do it as well. I'd absolutely love it. But I would ask that you like the video, share it, and post a comment, because that works massively for the YouTube algorithm. And this time of year, Six Nations is a nice kind of opportunity to grow the channel if I can get my videos out there in front of people. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, it would be a huge kind of boon to me and to the channel. So that out of the way, let's get into the rugby. So we're going to take the games in the order that that they happened at the weekend. So going to start with the first game, the opening game on Thursday. France 36, Ireland 14. France 22-0 up at half time. And, we had 2 tries from Biari. Jalabert got on the score sheet as well. Olivon and Atasogbe for them. And then Ramos adding points from the boot as well. For Ireland, in the second half, they got a couple of tries. Nick Timoney and Michael Milne. And then Sam Prendergast converting both of those. But, by the time Ireland even got on the score sheet, the game was already well over. Superb performance from France. And we're going to look at that in stat form to see, exactly how they stood out in this game. So first of all, tries. So France, second overall so far. Obviously England first with 5 tries. Then number of carries, they're second with 161. Offloads then, they're first with 21, and second is England with 8. So that's a massive difference between first and second for them. Then defenders beaten, first with 41, second England with 29. So again, a really big, difference there. And when you think about it, like England were playing the wooden spoon team from last year, the favourites to be wooden spooners this year. France were playing the team that finished third in last year's championship, and most people's tip to be third in this year's championship as well. So it makes their performance even more impressive, I think. Then we have kick meters. They were second with 1,161. Retained kicks first with 9. And their aerial contest, I thought, was absolutely excellent. Ireland trying to catch them out in the air. And it was very clear, that the likes of BLBRE and Atasogbe were absolutely on it, out on those wings when they were being targeted. And Ireland just never switched it up. They were fighting a losing battle, and they just kept on doing it. Next then, dominant contacts. So second with 19, and then dominant tackles first with 19. So, going into collisions themselves with the ball, one of the most dominant teams of the weekend, and then shutting down those Irish carries first with all those dominant tackles as well. So that's a potent mixture really for them. Turnovers won then first with 10. I think that was joint first because I think Ireland got the same amount. Breaks then first with 13. Line-out success, first 100%, the only team to go 100% this weekend. And then meters per carry, first with 4 meters per carry. And meters per kick, they were third with 29.5. But the fact that they were only third with 29.5 per kick, and we'll see it as you go over the games, it just shows the difference that happened in kicking this weekend, and it's going to be interesting to see if it's a trend over the rest of the competition, that every team was kicking longer. I wouldn't be surprised if this weekend was the longest overall kicking of any Six Nations weekend, because almost every team, and maybe every team, actually broke 1,000 meters with their kicking. So that is, normally it's kind of an anomaly when teams break over the 1,000 meters, but this weekend not so much. Like, we had a lot of teams getting right up there. We look at it, the top 4 teams kicked over 1,000 meters this weekend. That is not normal. Like, kind of outliers last year and in previous years as well would have been the France-Scotland game, where you would have both teams breaking 1,000 meters. But again, they would be anomalies across the entire tournament, where you'd have both teams breaking the 1,000 meters. But this weekend, 4 teams did it. Like, that is just crazy. And again, the fact that they're averaging close to 30 meters and they're in third place tells you that teams are kicking longer, and it's switched away from that kind of, let's put up like contestables that we can have players waiting underneath it. Now what it's about is, let's put up mixes. We're going to kick over the top, turn the defense, we're going to kick to space, we're going to go for those 50-22s. But also, when we're putting up our contestables, it's no longer a case of, let's get our guy there with time to set himself under the ball and go for a clean catch, because now the whole escort thing is gone, right? You can get penalized for kind of moving in the way of the kicking team when they're going for the kick. It means that now you can kick that bit longer, and your guy gets up. We saw France do it so many times. He gets up there. He's not trying to win the ball cleanly most of the time. What he's trying to do instead is he's just trying to tap it back on your side. And you've obviously trained for that. And you could see France absolutely did. Ireland did not, because Ireland were nowhere near any of the second balls. But France, every second ball, they were there. They got it. And a lot of the time, it gave them broken field play, Ireland's defence in disarray, and just made life so much easier for them. And I think that's a very interesting point in terms of the kicking strategies. If you look at Ireland then overall, so carries, they were 4th with 120, whereas we're used to Ireland being this kind of multi-phase, hang on to the ball. We'll have more possession and probably more territory than you, and we're going to trust their skills, go through those phases, and wait until we create some space and see a chink, and then we're gonna be hyper accurate with our execution, and we're gonna get through. Whereas this Ireland team this year are not anywhere near hyper accurate. Tons of handling errors from them, and 4th in carries as well. Just shows like that, they couldn't really get anything going. They weren't getting too many phases before they coughed up the ball and gave it back to France, and they were able to go on themselves. Then offloads, joint 3rd with 6th, which is also actually, because there's 3 of them there, so also joint 5th, if you like. Their friend is beaten then 4th with 23. Missed tackles 1st with 41. Very evasive runners on the French side, but also you just saw the Irish line coming up, and they were disjointed. Like, it was crazy. Like, normally I used to kind of seeing them coming up in this kind of umbrella because they defend from the outside in, right? But if you looked at them, they looked almost like, if you looked at a beach and the waves breaking on the beach, where you had, guys miles ahead of the ones behind them, and it didn't feel in any way connected all the way across at all. Like, and France just exploited that so easily. And, Ireland, sometimes we have shooters, but if you have a shooter, you've got to have connection in terms of the other guys coming up. And if you want an example of a team I thought that did it really well at the weekend, look at Italy's defense. The way Italy defended, they were doing something similar to Ireland, where you might have a shooter trying to put pressure and you've got good line speed, but the guys on either side of the shooter were coming up and making sure there's no space in behind them. Whereas Ireland, you had like Ringrose a number of times, you had Prendergast coming out as well, and a few others, and they'd come out, they'd shoot up, and maybe it's a half tackle, a missed tackle, but then there's a massive hole for France to go through because there's that disconnect in the defence. Happened a lot of times for Ireland. Next then, kicks and play, second with 40, like I think England were first. We'll come on to England in a minute, but I think England were first with 42. And again, we're seeing that difference in the kicking as well. Generally in recent years, in a lot of modern rugby games, you look at the stats and you see across, let's say, a season in the top 14, the URC, wherever, Champions Cup, the Six Nations, your averages are going to be somewhere in the mid-20s. You're going to be like, depending on, like, obviously trends come and go in the game, but generally you're talking somewhere between maybe 22 to 28, that kind of area, right? So to have so many teams kicking, into the 30s is, happens now and again, but two teams into the 40s in the first weekend is crazy. And again, a trend to maybe keep a lookout for as well, to see if that continues. Next then, dominant contacts, Ireland 6th with 8. So dominant contacts is basically dominant carries, right? So I was telling you, Ireland's forwards got absolutely no go forward for their team, other than into the second half, really, when the bench come on, the likes of Timony and stuff, gave them a little bit. But yeah, the starting pack, just completely depowered. And, again, you got that whole thing of France being dominant at the tackle, and then also on the Ireland side, them not being dominant through the contact either. So really difficult for Ireland to get any kind of front football there. And they, again, not able to switch up the tactics. Then dominant tackles for Ireland, they were 4th with 7, but, they needed more than that. When you're kind of losing so badly in certain areas of the game, you need to be like, let's say Ireland were missing a lot of tackles, but maybe top of the dominant tackle stat. You can kind of, even things out a little bit there, because your dominant tackle is more likely to force knock-ons or, turnovers on the poach, or either like, driving over the ruck, that kind of thing. But again, either side of the ball, they really weren't, bring that physicality. Then turnovers won, first with 10, equal with France. So at least they were getting those turnovers, and they were good on the poach. But you look at any, like, go back. It doesn't even have to be highlights. Just go back to the game, pick maybe like random time in the game, and let's say 5 minutes, watch 5 minutes. And within that, you're probably going to see more than likely both teams kind of getting a turnover at some point, right? Look at how quickly France switch on to a turnover. They'll almost certainly make a break. They'll have support there, and it may lead to a score or at least an entry into the 22. In contrast, look at the Irish one. The most likely thing you're going to see is the initial player who gets the ball, and gets that turnover. Either they keep on going at it to try and get a penalty off the referee, and the referee wasn't giving penalties for that. It was just letting you turn over. So eventually you realize, I've actually got to turn it over. So they turn it over, then slow ruck ball, and then they don't go anywhere from that. Like, Ireland were not set up to actually take advantage of turnovers. They were looking for the penalties at the breakdown instead to kick up the line and get field position. And again, they never adapted to the way the referee was refereeing it. They never had any kind of thought of, right, if we get a turnover, where is the space? Where are we going to attack? They weren't thinking of that at all. Then post-contact meters for Ireland, they were 4th overall with 89 over the game. Breaks then 5th with 4. Tackle success, they were 6th with 66.2%. Like, that is dire. That is like, compared to URC, that is, previous years, Zebre or Dragons adrift at the bottom of the table, nothing to play for, kind of stats like that. That is woeful at test level. So massive improvement to do there. But again, it's about that connectivity in defense. They didn't have it. I saw as well a lot of kind of pundits in Ireland talking about the Leinster defense and knee neighbour and blah, blah, blah. And for me, that's not the issue, right? Because the Irish defence, and they're saying because they're different now, because Leinster changed the defence, Ireland are struggling. But I don't buy that, honestly, because are you saying that like every single national team has to, defend exactly the same way as the dominant team that's in there, providing the players to them? Yes, Leinster provide a disproportionate amount than pretty much any other team in the Six Nations, but at the same time, I don't buy that. And one of the reasons why I don't buy that is because, it's not the first time that we're talking about top class professional players. We're talking about a lot of players who were good enough to go in the Lions tour down to Australia and, and again, defending a different system than they were playing under, at Leinster with knee neighbour as well. That you're saying that they can't adapt to a different defensive system. That makes absolutely no sense to me. More than likely, it's a case of, Farrell has come back in and he needs to bring in kind of a broom in terms of getting these guys back up to speed with the Irish system. And it just feels like, not enough has been done on that. It's obviously going to be worked on now, during the week for Ireland's next game, but still, it's a big worry that, it may, because I can see it being like, looking at the next 2 fixtures, I can see it being a case of big improvement in the defense, next week, continues probably the week after, and then they play England and all of those gaps are exploited again because, they didn't really fix the fundamental issues. All that happened was they were maybe against an opposition that didn't have the ability of a France or an England. So yeah, for me, that's a massive worry for Ireland. Then kick meters per kick, Ireland kicking for 26.3. And again, if we compare that to the 29.5 from France, it doesn't sound that much because it's like, just over 3 meters per kick difference. But what it tells you is that Ireland were veering towards contestable kicks. And we talked about the fact that France were the dominant team in the air when it was contestables. So Ireland weren't doing themselves any favours. And then France were kicking longer and they were getting joy from that as well. So basically France were getting joy from their own kicks and from the Irish kicks as well. And again, Ireland weren't able to adapt in terms of changing the tactics. Now let's have a look at players. So first of all, on the French side, meters made. First was Tomo Ramos with 116. And then fourth, Louis Bielbiari with 99. So, for Ramos to be top of that, yes, he's playing at fullback, but, you look at the talent that's in that team, and it tells you he had a really good game. When you think that Bielbiari was on fire, as was at the Sogbe as well. So brilliant performance from him, but all around from France as well. Next in offloads, they had the top 4 offloaders from the weekend. So first was Jalabert with 4. Joint second then was Atasogbe and Ramos with 3. And then we had Mo Fana fourth with 2. There were other players though with 2 as well. But like they definitely had the top 3 offloaders over the weekend. Defenders beaten then. Had second with Deporter with 7. Third was Ramos with 6. And then joint 5th were Jalabert and BL Barry with 5. So just beating defenders for fun all across the team. Next then, dominant tackles. Dominant tackles, yeah. So first was Lenny Noki with 3. Then Pito Mauvaka with 2. And then Emmanuel Miafu with 2. So looking at the couple of those guys off the bench, and again impact off the bench for them was massive. When Ireland looking to turn the game around, it got a little bit of momentum, but then these guys come on and just wrestle it back for France. And then the final stat we're going to look at from them is breaks. Second BL Barry joint, so BL Barry and Atasogbe with 3 each. Then on the Ireland side of things, missed tackles. First, Sam Prendergast with 7, and he's obviously getting a lot of stick because things. Personally, I don't put all the blame on his shoulders, but at the same time, and he did make a lot of tackles. In fairness, so maybe it's a percentage of the tackles that he made and missed. It's actually not as bad as it looked with 7. But for me, like if I was a coach and I knew all of the great things that he has in his game, like I don't understand the reasoning of not deciding, right, let's get like a tackle specialist, be that somebody within our squad, one of our coaches, or even bring somebody in, right? And every single day in training at Leinster, have him do some extra tackle stuff, right? Because you can't fix it I don't believe you can fix it at test level because the coaches don't have enough time with the players. But Leinster certainly could. Leinster could get somebody in there and it's not just about improving his tackle technique. It's about getting someone who's going to spend time with him and get him to the point where, he actually enjoys defending and tackling. So for me, I maybe I'm just stupid. I don't know, but I don't see why a team would not spend the money to do that, to improve a player that they feel is kind of the fulcrum of their team. And whether that's the RFU pay for that coach to go in with him and then maybe go to somewhere else. Because I know we did it when our scrum was absolutely woeful there. It must be, 10 or 15 years ago? We brought in special scrum coach who moved around the provinces and began that whole thing of improving our scrum kind of around the time when the likes of Furlong and Porter were starting to come through for us. So again, I don't see the logic of not doing that. Like, maybe there are reasons for it, but for me, it's if you've got a player like that has a lot of upsides but has this one downside, and again, I'm not picking on him because you could pick out a lot of other players in the Irish setup as well that need work on the defending. But if you have a player like that has a massive ceiling in terms of their attacking game, like if you want to make them better, why not work on one of their worst attributes and make that better? Because you're going to get bigger gains by if you can make him like I think it'd be easy to make him, let's say, a 20% better tackler than he is now, or a 30% better tackler. But you're not going to make him a 20% or 30% better attacker because he he's already got that. And it's kind of the law of diminishing returns, right? But it's somewhere I think is an easy gain if you spend the time and if it takes money as well to do it. But also, he's not the only one, as I said. Second on that list, James Gibson Park. For me, maybe the worst performance he's had for Ireland. It's got to be up there, right? He's normally absolutely brilliant for Ireland, but certainly not in that game. And then sixth overall, Gary Ringrose with 4. And we talked about he likes to shoot out of the line, but you've got to do that with responsibility as well. And you've got to have cognizance of what's happening with the rest of the defense. The defense were struggling and maybe shooting out a little bit too much as well. So, again, I think for me, it was a bad defensive performance across the team. It's not just on Sam Prendergast's shoulders, but at the same time, I do feel there is a chance there to maybe not like make him the best tackler in the world, certainly, but certainly improve him by spending a bit of time, and a bit of money as well. Next then, turnovers 1, a positive for Ireland finally. Tariq Byrne first with 3. He kind of suffered a little bit in terms of that the way the breakdown was refereed and gave away some penalties, but he still got 3 turnovers out of it as well. And, again, I think in terms of the way it's up to the players to adapt to the referee rather than the other way, but certainly that was a positive for him. And then a big positive off the bench breaks. 4th overall, Nick Timoney with 2. So, he was certainly someone who enhanced his reputation, I think, coming off the bench. Retained kick percentage then. First, James Gibson Park with 18.8, and second was Sam Prendergast with 18.2. So, those are certainly positive stats for those 2 guys as well, who again, overall, didn't play to their best ability, but certainly ending on a positive there. Okay, next then, we're going to move on to Italy versus Scotland. So the scoreline was Italy 18, Scotland 15 at the weekend. And, a lot of people, I didn't certainly predict it, but a lot of people thought that Italy might catch Scotland cold. And that's what happened in that game. And, we had tries from Lewis Line and Tommaso Menicello. And on the Scotland side, Jack Dempsey and George Horn for them. Then we had Paolo Gabisi adding points from the tee for Italy, and then Finn Russell doing the same for Scotland. But, it was a 3-point game, but in terms of performance, it was like the biggest margin of 3 points ever, ever is a hyperbole, but certainly one of the biggest margins of 3 points that we've seen in the game, I think, was the performance difference between these 2 teams was not 3 points. So in that respect, you maybe give Scotland a bit of credit for sticking in there. Terrible conditions for both teams, obviously, to go through, but we look at the stats, we can see on the stats, I think, some of the difference in the teams. Italy were 6th for carries with 84, so very few carries, but still they were able to get their points out of that. Then offloads, they were joint 3rd with 6. Defenders beaten, they were 6th with 17. So again, very few carries, very few defenders beaten, but they still got themselves over for the same amount of tries as Scotland. Then line-out steals, 1st with 4. That is excellent there. And no other team came near them. Kicks and play then, they were 5th with 34. And again, just to be 5th with 34 is crazy, because again, last year that would have been, up there either 1st or 2nd in most weeks. Dominant contacts then, they were 5th with 10. So not actually getting much in terms of, out of the ball carriers, going forward on average at least, but they did have, a few players, the likes of Menicello, that were able to punch through as well. Then dominant tackles, they were second with 13. So on the defensive side of the ball, which I again thought they were very impressive, they were making, bringing that physicality to the contact area. Then successful tackles, they were first with 226 and second place were France at 159. So, they made 67 tackles more than second place. That is crazy. That's a crazy amount for them to do. And there was none of this, Italy of old where, they made so many tackles, so they're going to turn the last 20 minutes. Didn't happen. The guys conditioned too well now. And, also they didn't have, obviously they were still in the game, but they didn't kind of have that thing of, let's just try and defend now for the rest of the game and hope that they don't score. They were trying to push them away, bring the ball forward themselves as well, and a bit more pragmatic than maybe they were previously. I think Quesada has brought that to the team. A bit of pragmatism in terms of don't do stupid things when it's a close game in your own 22. There still is the odd one here and there, but certainly not as much as before. Terminals won then. They were 6 with 4. So, defending really well. But it was one of those kind of almost like a soaking defense, where they'd have the line speed up, but then they wouldn't go beyond that in terms of, so that's why they're not winning that many turnovers, but they're frustrating the Scottish. And they're basically saying to Scotland, we don't think you can break us down. Give it a go. And and as you're giving it a go, we're going to put you under a hell of a lot of pressure with our line speed, and really good dominant tackles as well. Then next, post contact meters, they were 6th with 71. So again, that trend of, that they didn't actually make that much, of their carries. It was more kind of, isolated instances and then making the most of when you did. Tackle success, they were second with 85.9. And that is really good at test level. Generally always say 80% is your pass mark, and every percent above that is another step towards exceptional. Then meters per carry, third with 3.4. So, 3.4 is good. Ireland only got 3 meters per carry as an example. Then if we look on the Scotland side, so carries, they were first with 157. 167. Offloads, they were joint third with 6, so same as Italy. Missed tackles, they were 6th with 17. They had, again, a really decent defensive display overall from them, just in terms of not missing the tackles. But Italy were certainly the more clinical team because of that, or should I say, in spite of that. Kicks and play then, they were 6th with 30. So, every team 30. The range was 30 for Scotland, 42 for England. Again, a crazy number of kicks. Kick meters, they were 6th with 732, which is, again, we've seen over the last year Scotland changing the way they're playing. Again, you go back last year or certainly the year before, Scotland would have been averaging well over 900 meters kicked per game. Now they've reduced that down to, and they're regularly coming in with 700 odd, 600 odd, maybe going into the 800s. Maybe sometimes they will get up around 1,000, but they're kicking, they're still kicking 30 times per game, but still they're not kicking as long. So they're going for those contestables. But again, it feels like the game has kind of moved away from the contestables that themselves and Ireland are doing, which are put it up and try and win it cleanly, and then set up. Basically, the difference is teams like Ireland and Scotland are looking for that catch, set up a ruck, and then play from there. You've maybe got a set move off the first phase after that catch. or maybe like a couple of phases. Whereas, as said, France especially are not doing that. They don't want the ruck. They want slap the ball back and then work off, broken field and catch the defense out that way. Do not let the defense set. So it feels like Scotland are kind of changing the way they're playing to go in a direction that maybe the game is moving away from already. Excellent dominant tackles. They were only 5th with 6. So, again, against an Italy side who weren't making that much in terms of the meters and the post-contact meters, they still couldn't dominate them in the tackle. And what that means then is that, yes, Italy aren't making that much ground, but the ball is secure for the most part because they're not getting driven back in the tackle. Next then, successful tackles. They were 6th with 87. Carry meters, they were 6th there with 240. Like, that's not a great number. Then kicks bounced. So kicks bounce is where, you're basically hitting the grass rather than either kicking up in the air for players to try and catch it, kicking into touch, maybe from your own 22, like directly into touch, or kicking long and it being caught by one of the back three. Kicks bounce. Generally, when you're looking at that, you've got maybe 3 types of kicks that it might be. One is that little chip over the top where, it might bounce up for your player and it can go either way. It's kind of a 50-50. You got like a grubber obviously through as well. And then you got a long kick where you might be going for 50-22, but certainly what you're trying to do is you want that ball to bounce because then, the defender, has 2 problems. One, you may have turned him where he's facing now his own line and he doesn't actually know too much what's happening behind him, and you can catch him, win a penalty, or, force a knock on or something like that, charge down his clearance kick, and it could lead to an opportunity to score for you. Or, he's kind of nervous of the ball's bounced once and I'm not there yet. Where's the next bounce going to go? So then he slows down, trying to be able to react to where the ball is going to go. And sometimes because of that, it might bounce in for a 50-22, or at least, a really difficult defensive lineup for them. Or, he might, allow your own players to get up there. So the fact that Scotland aren't doing any of that really, again, is a bit of a worry for a team that didn't produce that many opportunities and get themselves into too many good positions either. Breaks then, they were 6th with 0. Like, that Scotland backline making 0 breaks is absolutely criminal. You couldn't have fathomed it, especially looking at how Glasgow are doing this year, and that's the I think for a lot of Scotland fans, that's the real rub of it, is Glasgow are doing fantastic, coming in. Guys have got to be in superb mental state in terms of really confident coming off the back of that. They go into the Scotland squad and suddenly it just all evaporates. It's crazy. Tackle success then, they were 5th with 77%. So only Ireland were worse than them in the tackle. And again, Ireland were facing France. Scotland were facing an Italy team who were finding it difficult to get over the gain line in the carries. Retained kick percentage then, they were first with 26.7. So again, the fact that they were kicking less than the other teams, or sorry, should I say shorter and less than the other teams, they were contesting more, and that's at least a positive that they were winning those contestables. But again, you're winning a contestables to set up a ruck, for the most part, not always, but a lot of the time a ruck. Whereas maybe some of the other teams are again moving away from that style. it's kind of fads, obviously, in rugby. Things come in fashion and out. So we'll see which is the better strategy, I think, through the tournament, because I think the kicking side of things is certainly a developing situation. Next then, line out success. 6 was 73.7. Again, they come in with, some of, especially Glasgow, fantastic line out, and not just line out, but line out maul, amazing variations, and just a brilliant platform. And in this game, completely not. And, there were question marks about the picks at hooker, before, like when the squad was announced, you got hookers who were in fantastic form with Glasgow, not getting a look in. And I think the calls for those guys, to be brought in certainly will get louder from here. And then meters per carry, there were 1.4 meters per carry. And you compare that to Italy, who got 3.4 meters per carry and were in third. And again, it's an Italy side that we already talked about, who were struggling to make meters, especially post contact, but still, they were making almost 3 times as much, 2.5 times as much as Scotland. So again, that's a really big worry for them. Then we go on to the players. So on the Italy side, meters made, third was Tommaso Menoncello with 103. So a team that didn't make that many meters overall. Again, it was the likes of Menoncello being able to punch those holes and make those breaks, and having a guy like that, can be gold dust. But you look on the Scotland side, and you had, Tuipulotu and Hugh Jones, who were guys of that type of ability, who should have been able to do that and weren't able to do it. So again, question marks about, the shape of the Scotland attack, etc. Lots of work to do there. Line of steals then. First was Michel Lamoureux with 2, the only person to get more than 1 across the weekend. Next then, line out throws 1. Joint first was Nick Otero with 10. That was the same as Marchand for France. And then successful tackles, we had first Nicola Canone with 26. Second, Manuel Zuliani, plus Zambonin and Lorenzo Canone with 19. So they had the top 4 successful tacklers across the weekend as well. From one team, that is amazing. Yes, they made, again, 60 odd tackles more than the next best teams, who were expecting a lot of our guys to be up at the top, but it doesn't take away the fact that those 4 guys, between them, had to make almost 100 tackles. That is a real shift, plus all of the other stuff they're doing as well. So absolutely brilliant from them. On to the Scotland side, and we actually have some positives here finally. So carries, first was Jack Dempsey with 21, and looking at the stats here, there's a reason why he was picked out. As like a lot of people said, most of that Scotland team, bar Jack Dempsey, didn't cover themselves in glory really, and he was a standout when we were watching the game. And now the stats have come in, you can kind of see it again. Retained kicks, then Ben White with 7, so at least his box kicks were accurate and getting something for his team. Then dominant contacts was third for Jack Dempsey as well with 5. So he wasn't just carrying a lot, he was also winning the collision. Then turnovers 1. We had joint second, Rory Darge and Kyle Stein with 2 each. So certainly a tick for those guys, at least in that part of the game. And then post-contact meters, fourth was Jack Dempsey with 26. So, not many positives for Scotland, but at least we know that Jack Dempsey had a decent game and kind of confirmed what we thought already. Okay, so that's that game done. And then finally, we move on to England 48, Wales 7. So, let me pull up the summary here. So England 29-0 up at half time. And just kind of tore Wales a new one. They didn't get to the record score that they got last year, but still very impressive for England. Henry Arundel got a hat-trick. One of the easiest hat-tricks you're going to see in the game of rugby. It was basically catch the pass, and in you go. Because, Wales ran out of defenders, and it's no surprise given that they're down to 13 for 2 periods during the game. Then you had Roebuck got on the score sheet as well. Had a penalty try. Tommy Freeman got 2. George Ford adding points to the boot. And then on the other side, Wales, lone response from Josh Adams, and that was converted by Dan Edwards. So let's have a look at the stats for the teams. England, first of all, try scored first with 7. Carries then third with 143. Offloads, they were second with 8. And that's compared to, I'm pretty sure we said 21 for France. So, the difference in that's going to be interesting, I think, if we get to that Le Crunch at the end of the terms as well. Defenders beaten then, they were second with 29. The lineout steals, they were second with 3. And lineouts won, they were first with 19. Lineout percentage, they were 95% second. So just one missed lineout at 20 for them. Kicks and play then, they were first with 42. Kick meters, first with 1,332, which is an absolutely crazy number. Dominant contact, they were first with 24. Box kicks, they were sixth with 8. So lots of England fans complaining about them box kicking too much. And for this game, at least, they didn't. But they still kicked a lot. But the kicks were, again, more tactical. And we're going to see as well when it comes to players, they were the only team really that were kicking from 10 compared to everyone else who was predominantly kicking from 9. Not exclusively, but certainly predominantly kicking from 9. But you can see there a lot of kind of firsts and seconds for England. So it's not just a case of one aspect of the game was good. They were good all across the board, I think. But if we continue down then, carry meters made, they were second with 556. Post contact meters, first with 154. So they carried for less meters than the top team, but they made more meters post carry. So it means they were winning the collisions more often and being able to exploit that. Then line breaks, they were second with 12. Tackle success percent, they were first with 88.3. So we talked about a lot of kind of, set piece and offensive stats there. And now defense in there as well. You can see why it was such a one-sided affair. Retained kicks then, they were sixth with 14.3. So again, similar to kind of the French thing of they weren't really looking to, or certainly if they were looking to, they weren't successful at retaining their kicks. But again, I felt like from their point of view, it was more, let's try and create a bit of chaos and exploit it. Next then, meters per carry, they were second with 3.9. France first with 4. So they were very close, just like 0.1 of a meter, over all of those carries behind France as well. And then meters per kick, they were first with 31.7. And if you've been here before, I talk about if your average for your kicks is somewhere around about 25, it means a lot of your kicks have been contestables, mainly box kicks, but certainly chips over the top, grubbers, etc. But the majority will be box kicks. If you're trending more towards the 30 and above, you're kicking tactically, which means you're kicking a little bit longer, territorially, not tactically. You're kicking a little bit longer. You want the ball to bounce. You're trying to turn the defense. You're trying to play the game in the opposition's half of the field as much as possible. And what you're trying to do as well is Your chase generally is going to be good for that. And also it's this whole thing of turn the defense around, put pressure on them. Even if they have the ball, we're going to pressure you, and we're banking on you either, making a mistake before you kick the ball or not kicking it very well. And I thought England did all of those things really well. Then on to Wales. Carries, they were 5th with 101. Offloads, they were 6th with just one offload from Wales throughout the game. Defenders beaten 6th with 17. Missed tackles, they were 2nd with 29. That's second only to Ireland. Line-out percentage then was 5th with 76.5. So all of the other issues, no line-out for the meter. Kick meters then 3rd with 1,141. So they're kind of the anomaly from this weekend, in that they're up there with France and England as some of the longest kickers of the weekend, but obviously they weren't getting the reward from it that England and France were. But I think that's more of an overall issue from Wales in terms of, it wasn't just one area where the performance was a problem. Dominant tackles then, they were 6th with just 2. So even defensively not winning collisions. Box kicks then, they were 5th with 14. So these two teams were the lowest box kickers across all of the games at the weekend. Post contact meters then, 5th with just 85. Breaks, they were 4th with 5. Meters per carry, they were 5th with 2.9. And jackals, they were 2nd with 2. So at least that's a bit of a positive for them. And then meters per kick, they were 2nd with 30.8. So both teams here kicking long. But again, there's a difference, I think, between the teams, obviously, in terms of England, when they were kicking long, they were winning those kicking contests. So a lot of Wales kicks were just kicking back to England, but eventually, it ended up with England actually coming out on top of that. And maybe, you would think that Wales probably shouldn't have gotten involved in those kicking contests at that stage. But next, then we're on to players. So tries first, obviously Henry Arundel with his hat-trick, 3. Then we have carries. So 2nd overall was George Ford with 19. And then 3rd was Ben Elwer, 18. So again, George Ford massively involved, as a 10, carrying more than anyone else in his team. And again, it just shows the way England's point of difference compared to the other teams. I think a lot of other teams playing a lot off 9, whereas they played very much off 10. Meters made then 6th overall, and the highest ranked England player was George Ford with 82. There was a bunch of French guys on there, and then George Ford was next. So again, and he's another one of these guys that comes in for a lot of stick from English media and some sections of the English fans as well. But you look at his stats and you think, geez, he's doing well. But that he has kind of less margin for error in terms of the criticism that he's going to get if he does have a poor game. Try assist then, first, joint first, Fraser Dingwall and George Ford with 2 each. Defenders beaten then, first, Tommy Freeman with 10. Kicks and play, first, George Ford with 26, and the rest of the top 6 across the weekend were all scrum halves. So again, just shows you England playing off 10 rather than 9. Then attacking catch success. First, Henry Arundel with 2. I think he was the only one that got 2 across the weekend as well. Post contact meters. First, Tommy Freeman with 32, and second, Ben Earl with 30. So, Freeman, he may not have got himself a hat-trick. He did get like a couple of tries, but, very impressive post contact. And then Ben Earl in there as well. And, Ben Earl is one of those kind of weather vanes players in that if he is making post-meter contacts or post-contact meters, sorry, you know England are doing well, and if he's not, you know England really are struggling. Then breaks first, Tommy Freeman with 3, and then we had Tom Roebuck and Fraser Dingwall with 2 each, and then kick meters. First, George Ford with 980 kick meters. Second place, Anton Dupont with 506. So Ford kicked almost double the number of meters as the next player after him. So again, you see England are kicking along. They're kicking for that territory. And, you know, what that tells you is that, you know, that first of all, obviously it's a tactic to do that. But the second thing is that they're really confident in their defense, that they're not going to kick to you and you're not going to run back and kind of slalom through them and go on and maybe set up, offload and score a try. They feel like, you know, it may happen, but it's not going to happen all that often. You know, they're confident in his ability to put it in exactly the spot that they want them to. They're confident in their ability to get, you know, the chasers up, whether that's wingers or fullback or whoever. And they're also confident in the connectivity of the defense that's coming up behind those chasers as well, that you're not going to get caught out with it. And again, it's just a team that have found, I think, their groove and their way of playing that really suits them. On to then Wales. Not many positives from players, but there are 2 at least. 1 meters carried. 5th was Lewis Rees-Zammit with 87. So from fullback, you know, doing well. You know, obviously coming back from NFL to rugby, and yeah, he was 1 at least half positive, I think, for his team. And post-contact meters was 3rd, Aaron Wainwright, and he actually made more post-contact meters than Jack Dempsey, who was 4th on the same list. But I saw he getting stick. You know, he did get a yellow card. And he gave away penalties as well. So one part of his game was good, but I think Dempsey overall probably had a better game for Scotland than he did for Wales. But yeah, that's our look at the stats for the weekend. I think a lot of interesting stuff in there. Hope you kind of feel the same way as well. And as we go through the tournament, I think it's going to be interesting to see how those numbers change. You know, how teams, seeing what's happened in the first round, adapt as well and actually change their strategy in terms of whether that's with kicking or, you know, in terms of, let's say with Ireland, maybe the number of shooters is going to go down, more connectivity in defence, etc. So I think there's a lot to be learned over the coming the coming rounds. But next then, before we finish, let's have a quick look at the table. So let me bring it up here. Okay, so top table, we have England, 1 win from 1, obviously for them. Bonus point win, and the points difference has them there on the top of the table. So 5 points from the first game. France, 5 points as well, 1 win from 1. Didn't score as many points against Ireland as England did against Wales, but they weren't too far off either, you know. Points difference of 22 against Ireland is pretty damn good, you'd have to say. Then 3rd, Italy, the only other team to win it the weekend. No bonus point for them, but for a team who, you know, certainly I was predicting would be in a wooden spoon fight with Wales in that final game of the championship, they're doing a hell of a lot better than I expected. So they're there in 3rd place with 4 points. Then Scotland, the only other team to actually gain a match point, you know, finish within 7, obviously 3 points of Italy in that game, so they got themselves a losing bonus point. Then Ireland, who, you know, are in 5th, only basically due to the fact that Wales, you know, they got tanked by France, but Wales got tanked even more by England, and Wales there at the bottom, you know, with no points as well. So Ireland and Wales with 0 points so far. And then, yeah, looking at the groupings, really, you would say England and France, England, a team that had the momentum coming in, France, the tournament favourites, the defending champions. I think they're in a group on their own. Italy, I think, potentially are going to be that team that are in a little bit of no man's land between them and the rest at this point, who maybe not serious contenders for the title, but certainly I think they're going to do a lot better than a lot of people thought, especially me. And then the other three, you would expect Ireland to maybe emerge from that bottom pack, and be up there closer to Italy at some point, but they've got to earn that. You can't just give it to them, right? They're going to have to put in those performances and show that they can do that. But it feels like those bottom three are going to kind of scrap amongst themselves, and one of them is going to emerge as a team that's going to finish somewhere around about where maybe third or fourth place. But I'd say, those bottom three, you can pretty much, even after one round, which is weird, all the teams that lost in the first round, you can almost certainly write them off in terms of having a tilt at the title. Obviously, Six Nations can change dramatically round to round, and we may be thinking very differently after the second round, but that's certainly how I feel after the first round. And then just in terms of the coaches, Borthwick, a lot of criticism for him, certainly during last year's tournament, still getting a lot of stick. But I think he's proved his critics wrong. They're on a 12-game winning streak now. And, but it is England. And unfortunately, there's a section of their media and their fans, not all their fans, and certainly I don't think, many of the England fans that watch my stuff, but there are ones that are just waiting, kind of sharpening the knives, to have a go at him and won't give him that kind of fair, you can give fair criticism, but also, you can have, and it's not just England. I think every fan base has it. It's just the English media, I think, kind of magnify it, that for certain coaches or certain players, they're always ready, to kind of do a hit piece on them. But for him, I think he's doing really well. Then Galtier with France as well, had certainly against Ireland, brought them to another level in terms of the performance in this tournament. Quesada then for Italy just completely outcoached his opposition there in very poor conditions at the weekend. Townsend for Scotland then, the calls for Franco Smith are just going to get louder and louder, I think, at this stage. Ireland then, Andy Farrell returning, and this whole thing of allowing your coach to have a sabbatical to go and do the British and Irish Lions thing, never seems to work out all that well for the team when that coach returns, and I think Ireland are getting that as well, on top of the players having a different form. So I think it's a double whammy for Ireland at this stage. And, Andy Farrell, I think at the moment he's getting a bit of a pass because he's come back into the setup. But, other coaches were still there, during the time as well. So, certainly I think the coaching team for Ireland, have a lot of improving to do themselves, and then improve the players too. And then for Wales, Steve Tandy there, he had positives for Wales when he came in the autumn. This is first Six Nations game, and it was a big ask for Wales to do anything against England. And he's a guy that I think genuinely, out of all of the coaches, or certainly the coaches who were doing poorly, deserves the most slack, and also given the fact that his union, the WRU, are apparently doing their absolute level best to completely tank Welsh rugby in all forms at the minute, torpedoing their regions, very poor communication, and just not creating a good environment for anyone. So I think he's in a massively difficult situation there. And I do expect him, though, to have an impact and improve things. We may not see a massive improvement this Six Nations, but I think we will see in a couple of games at least signs that those guys are getting better. Okay, so that's us done for this week. We got another week coming up, and it should be more fun and more things to discuss once the second round is done.